There it is. Got my mustache twirl. Different time. Mark, thank you so much for coming on the interview show tonight.
Thank you, Vince. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we're here for Pose Magic Academy, Pose Magic Theater. Recently, we kind of signed up with Stevens Magic too to help us promote things.
Oh, beautiful!
So, yep, it's going to be an amazing, effort with Stevens Magic to start putting out workshops and lectures, interviews, and things like that. And you're one of the earliest ones to be part of that. So, congratulations.
Thank you for that. I'm honored. And I was telling some magic friends, I was telling them, I'm doing something that Vernon never did, or Slidini, or Marlowe, or Scarney, or even like Animan. I'm being interviewed for Pose Magic.
That's right.
Never. You can check the literature. Vernon never happened.
Yeah. Malini too never did that. Yeah.
Malini was never interviewed for Pose Magic. That's right. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, it's like you beat them all those golden age magicians.
That's right. I beat Hen Fetch finally at something.
So I'm gonna try to go over some of I have your bio up here from your website, and I'll have the website up. Oh, we got some comments already. People coming in saying hello to everyone. All right. Yeah. So there is it. LevyInnovation.com. So if you want to find out more about Mark and what he's doing, we can definitely go and check him out. But I'll read it off to you so you don't have to stay focused on the show. You can go check that out later. But Mark Levy is the founder of Levy Innovation LLC, a positioning and branding firm that helps consultants and other thought leaders increase their fees by up to 2,000%. His clients include a former department head in the White House, a speaker to the United Nations, CEOs of major organizations, a former head of the strategy unit of the Harvard Business School, performers of network TV and from New York and Las Vegas, New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller authors, TED and TEDx speakers. Before devoting his work full-time to Levy Innovations, Mark served as chief marketing officer of Inc. 5000, experiential branding organization whose clients include Bank of America, Gap, Samsung, Time Warner, Tivo, and Harvard and Stanford Universities. Mark has written for the New York Times and has written or co-created 5 books. His last book, Accidental Genius, using writing to generate your best ideas, insight, and content, has been published in 10 languages. Mark has also taught research writing at Rutgers University. In addition to positioning himself as a consultant, Mark creates magic tricks and shows, and that's why he's here tonight. His work has been performed in Carnegie Hall in Las Vegas on all the major TV networks. He also created the off-Broadway show Chamber Magic, which has played for 16 years and is the longest running one person.
Well, now it's 20. You're reading 20 years.
Kind of update that website.
Right. No.
You got to put some code in there. Just update itself automatically. Yeah. It's like people can, go to the site and refresh while it kicks over. That's right. On the anniversary.
That's right.
So obviously we're here talk for magic this evening, but I'm sure all that kind of coalesces to some degree to influence your direction of magic. But before we get to your career, let's talk about how you were influenced by that. Like, what got you started in thinking about it? Like, what begat that sort of mindset?
How did I get involved in magic? I'll tell you how I got involved in magic.
Sure.
And because this very much has to do with the way I think about magic now. So I grew up in Flushing, New York. I was born in 1962. So like maybe 1968, 1969, something like that. I'm 6, 7 years old. And my father brings me to this big deli. And we're sitting there in the deli on Roosevelt Avenue. And the waiters are dressed in the white linen with the black piping, kind of cheap. You can throw it in the wash right away. So there was a guy there. I remember him. He was bald. He had this ring of hair around his head, but he was bald, and he had black glasses. And he said to me, "You want to see a magic trick?" And I said, "Yeah." And he took the pencil from behind his ear that he would write the orders up with, and he took a sugar cube, and he said, "What's your name?" And I said, "Mark." And he said, "Oh, M." And he wrote an M on the sugar cube, And then he dropped it into the glass of water in front of me and took my hand and held it over the water and had me wave my fingers over the water. And then he had me look at my palm, and there was an M in my palm. The M apparently had floated up through the water, like to my palm. And I was so stunned. It was, it was the greatest friggin' thing I ever saw in my life. And by the way, so where I said that that's in, and I'll tell you something else about growing up with magic. But when I said that that's been very influential on the magic that I create with Steve Cohen or other stuff that I've done. I've written books with Matt King, with Joel Bauer, with things like that. Very influential with my magic is that things need to happen in the person's own hands or in their own head. Like if you were to see chamber magic, every single trick in chamber magic is so full of participation. Even the first trick is just a card trick, and like 30 or 40 people in the audience are participating in this card trick or so. So like we try to get as much as possible, get this stuff done in people's hands. It reminds me years ago, Michael Amar gave me a tape he had made. I think it was called Making Magic Memorable or something like that. And on the tape, he talked about that when he was younger, he used to volunteer at senior citizens homes, right? I switched the term there as I was about to, senior citizens homes. And he asked, it was not some formal survey. He would just ask people, have you ever seen a magician live? And if any of them, so these were older people in their 70s, 80s, 90s. And if they said yes, he asked them if they remembered any trick that they had ever seen. And Michael invariably said, like almost always the answer would be, it was some trick that happened to them. In other words, it wasn't like, oh, yes, I saw this on stage and he was sawing this person in half. Like, I guess occasionally. It was much more like the coin changed to a copper coin in my hand or something like that. So we always try to make that aesthetic happen. As a matter of fact, years ago, 20 odd years ago, that aesthetic, I wrote up a trick. I created a trick that I published in Magic Magazine. And part of it was a trick by Paul Harris and Bill Hers, right? Gave them credit for that. It was called Ennobling the Prediction. And what it was the trick with the sugar packets, right? Sugar packets. And you write down a 1 on one sugar packet, a 2 on another sugar packet, a 3 on another, a 4 on another, 5 on another. And you keep on having the person throws them like they're dice. And invariably, they come up with a number. But before you reveal the number, you write a prediction on their palm with the pencil or the pen, and you have them close their palm. And, I would say to them, now you're the prediction. You are the prediction. Don't let anyone get into your hand. I want you to keep it there. Don't get too nervous, because if you do, you'll sweat and you'll ruin the whole thing. But you're who everyone is going to want to see at the end of this, and it was. And so if you think about it, it's a trick with sugar and a trick with the prediction in the palm, right?
Wow.
And by the way, the idea of ennobling the prediction, the reason why I thought of it that way is because I used to do that Paul Harris, Bill Hers trick all the time of predicting what number people were going to pick on these sugar packets that they were rolling like dice. But I would write down the prediction on a napkin, that you've blown your nose with or something. I would write it on impromptu stuff. And I thought, this is about predicting the future. This is about something that the spectator's doing, that like, it's really rude to write down the prediction on something that you're blowing your nose in or you're wiping your face.
Yeah.
And so that's why I said, okay, if I don't have a book with me or anything to write the prediction down, or a business card or whatnot, what is the most glorious thing I could write the prediction down on? And I thought, the person themselves. You know what I mean? And that's where that came from. That's where the thinking was.
Wow.
So I bet you're sorry you asked me that.
No, not at all. That's great. I mean, we've talked, we've had a lot of conversations in the
We
past.
have. Oh yeah, you've been very inspiring. So thank you.
The thank you very much. But yeah, this is a concept that is kind of lost in some aspects of the mystery arts currently. We've talked about that lots of times before. Put having the audience experience it as if they are part of it, as if the wonder is happening in their hands. It's like, why is that so hard for some magicians and mentalists to understand? It's amazing that it just kind of flies over people's heads occasionally.
Right. It's this idea, as much as possible. Years ago, in the late 90s, I had a one-man parade in Linking Ring, and there was a trick in it that I think won some kind of award. Maybe I'm imagining that, but it was a trick I used to do a lot, and it was called Spectator A reads the mind of Spectator B, which I then later made Spectator A. I made the audience reads the mind of Spectator A. And without talking about what the tricks are or so forth, what I try to do as much as possible is like, no, you read the other person's mind. No, you find the selected card. You know what I mean? That's putting the M on their own hand. Like, that's right. I know that your work, that's pivotal to your work, getting people, like, not keeping them at a distance, getting them like right in there, right? Like, how do you go about doing that?
Well, now the interview's been turned around.
See, I'm doing it now, but I didn't even intend to. That's right.
That's right. I understand that, about how important it is to have a connection with your audience. And I always believe that living in the Harry Potter universe or Star Wars would be awful to some degree, because the most amazing people, the most special people in those universes are wizards, space wizards or Hogwarts wizards. They're wizards, and they're born that way. They don't, magicians of our ilk, we look at books, we watch videos, we're mentored under more experienced magicians. But in those places, you could do that too, but you had to be born special as well.
Right.
And that's awful. When it comes to a mystery, everybody wants to be Sherlock Holmes. Nobody wants to be Watson. They want their friends to be Watson,
Right.
So by having that experience with your audience, by having them feel like they're special for that moment, at least, you create a greater connection with them, because it's not about you, it's about the audience. Love your audience. So many magicians have said that. Few practice it.
Right.
It's like if you want to be special, if you want to be the smartest person in the room, or at least think you are, then I guess focus on mentalism. Some mentalism, not all mentalism.
Right.
A lot of mentalism, though.
Right.
But you get the idea. Mark,
by the way, I want to hear what you're about to say, but this idea of having the magic happen in their own hands. The first magic book that I ever owned, that I ever bought, remember, I was like a kid, like 6 years old or so. So I remember from, I think, the Scholastic Book Club, maybe, I bought Spooky Tricks, which is the first book for many people in the 60s. And like, it's a very common book to be. And the first trick in that book is the holding the fingers up in front of your face, where the hot dog of your fingers is now floating in space. And the second trick in that book is where you take a tube of paper and you hold it up to your eye, and you hold your hand up here and you see a hole through your hand.
Yeah.
And like, I'm pretty sure that those were the first two tricks I ever learned. And obviously I did them to myself. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that idea of experiencing the magic in myself has never left me. So it's that kind of thing that I try I want everyone to see their own fingers floating, is what I'm saying.
See that those two tricks that you're talking about, and a couple other ones in that book and other similar books. The book, because I got it from the Scholastic book fair when I was
Right,
at
right.
school. That's right. And the floating sausage. Look, I'm doing it right now. I can see the sausage. Right. That made me hate the book. And, and here's why. Because I grew up. The magicians that influenced me were Doug Henning and Harry Blackstone Jr., and then later David Copperfield.
Right. All amazing. Yep.
All of them are amazing. Yeah. And I wanted to do those kind of magic tricks. I wanted to see how that magic was done. I wanted to know cards and how to, and manipulate objects and make coins disappear and that sort of thing. And that book didn't teach me that. It taught me how an optical illusion, which it was cool to a kid. Yeah, I admit it. I thought it was cool, but it's not what I was looking for. It wasn't until years later I found those books.
Meanwhile, Doug Henning, in one of his specials, it may have been the opening of one special, had you do your hands, had you do the rubbery fingers thing.
That's
so that book was way cooler than you're giving it credit to. Not that was in that book, but I'm saying that concept.
Well, I'm just telling you how my kid brain was working.
Right.
It probably wasn't a fair judgment, but sure.
Right.
Yeah, later on I appreciated those things a little bit more, but at the time I knew what I wanted, and that wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't some of those were cool for optical illusion purposes, but it was like, well, this is something I do to myself, but I'm not the book is sharing that with me, and that's nice, but I can't share that with an audience, other than tell them how to do it,
right.
If that makes more sense. Yeah. But of course, Doug Henning has also the extra benefit of being mentored by Di Vernon.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. Doug, like that show, I saw the magic show on Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the things. I wrote Doug Henning in my childlike way. I guess maybe I was 11 or so.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote him a letter. And I made a list of all the tricks that I wanted to buy from Tannen's the Tannen's 10 catalog. I made a list, like it was probably a few, and I asked Doug, which trick should I buy? And rather than ignoring me or blowing it off, he wrote me this super nice detailed letter, about, well, it's, I don't remember. I still have the letter, but it was about the audience or something. He didn't comment on any of the tricks, but he gave me real ideas or so. And, just wonderful. I adored him.
Yeah, he was amazing. He was one of my, definitely one of my favorite magicians. Like I said, it was him and Blackstone, then later Copperfield. And that sort of thing. And it was just like, they really influenced my direction too, because they had that aspect of wonder, they're sharing the wonder with the audience. They definitely love their audience. I mean, maybe not Blackstone Jr. so much, but you find that out later. As far as I was concerned, the TV, I thought he was entertaining me too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I loved him. I never saw his full evening show, but when I saw him perform on TV, I adored him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. So how did you, you get into magic, you read these books, and you're influenced by television performers, and occasionally you see a show and that sort of thing. At what point did you start getting into magic? Like, that it became an aspect of your identity and career?
Oh, well, okay. So interesting story. I was consumed with magic when I was a kid and when I was a teenager. And as a matter of fact, I was consumed so much by it. I remember at one point that I found it disturbing, like how all consuming it was. It was everything I looked at was a trick to me. It was a methodology. Hey, Stephanie. It was a methodology, or, everything I looked at, I tried to think, how can I use it as a prop, or how can I use it as a trick? And after a while, I just said, why? This is pretty disturbing. Is this normal? So I left magic at about 17, I just got burnt out, I think, because I was so consumed with magic. By the way, I was talking to Johnny Thompson once about this, and he said, I did exactly the same thing. He talked about he left. I left magic for like 20 years. And then when I was 37 or so, I was in the book industry. I was the director of the third largest book wholesaler in the world. We buy millions of dollars worth of books from the publishers like Random House and Simon and Schuster, and we'd sell them to the bookstores. And I befriended David Pogue, the guy who at the time was the biggest selling Mac writer of all time, Macs for Dummies. You know, he had written all these For Dummies books, not just Macs for Dummies, but other things for dummies. And because he knew I liked magic and he liked magic, we decided that we would team up and do Magic for Dummies. So I became even though I hadn't done magic for 20 years, I became the magic consultant for Magic for Dummies. And so that gave me carte blanche to call all my heroes like Harry Lorraine and Paul Harris and people like that and get them to contribute tricks to the book. So that was super, that was awesome. So yeah. And then from doing that, I wrote a book with Matt King. I wrote a book with Joel Bauer, and I met Steve Cohen about 21 years ago. And that's probably in the magic. I was an associate editor for Magic Magazine for Stan Allen. And so, but about 21 years ago, Joel Bauer introduced me to Steve Cohen. Joel said, "Oh, Mark, you're in New Jersey. I know this guy in New York who's really smart." He said, "I think you'll like each other." And so he gave me his number, and I just called Steve, and we met at some deli in New York, and we just kind of had a session there for 3 hours. And, like sitting there among hot dogs and knishes and whatnot, like doing tricks. So that's what we did. So that's how I'm in magic today still.
Yeah. If you're ever in Baltimore, I got to take you to this great deli there that has the best corned beef sandwiches you ever had in your life. Knishes aren't that bad either.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll hopefully do it. All right, good. I like that.
Yeah, so that's amazing. And then you helped co-write Chamber Magic, which is this big hit and that sort of thing. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's so Chamber Magic. I created Steve's brand, of the Millionaire's Magician.
Yep, I remember you telling me that. Yeah, probably audience for that too, of course.
Yeah. So Steve originally he wanted a publicity stunt. Like he was not known. He used to perform in a t-shirt. He would get like $500 to do bas mitzvahs and, stuff like that. And, and he wasn't getting that many of those. So he wanted to do a publicity stunt. But I remembered thinking to do a publicity stunt, that's really going to amplify something about who you are. And until we define exactly who you are, we don't know what to amplify, if that makes sense, right? You need to blow something up. You need to blow an idea up huge. So how could we do that if we didn't know who you are? And so I looked at Steve's stuff, and Steve is super smart. I mean, if anyone who's listening has had conversation with Steve, I know you have. Like Steve is just a genius. He's so smart. And he went to Cornell, and he's very articulate. And he grew up in Chappaqua, New York, which is one of the most moneyed areas in the United States. And so I remember, when he was a kid, he would perform for people who were filthy rich, decadently rich. It's just he wasn't a business person. So he didn't think about that. He would perform for anyone at any price, right? He just wanted to do magic. And so I remember thinking, he's super smart. He went to Cornell. He's really articulate. He comes, like he's performed for the decadently rich or so. So David Blaine's the street magician, Penn and Teller are the bad boys of magic. Like everyone has their niche, but no one is doing magic for the decadently filthy rich, like the obscenely rich. It was back then, it was just not a thing anyone was doing, right? Mellini or so had done it, but no one was doing it back then. So I said to Steve, this is what I think you need to be. I think you need to be the millionaire's magician, entertainment for exclusive events, decadently rich, like all this stuff. Anyway, I told this to Steve. He thought the idea was pretty good. He wasn't like jumping up and down that it was the greatest idea I ever thought it was pretty good. He shared it with some people who thought it was the worst idea they'd ever heard. Like people who said, you sound obnoxious. You'll never have any friends if you call yourself the millionaire's magician. Then he shared it with his publicist. And if you can believe this, this is what his publicist said. His publicist said, the millionaire's magician, do you know how many millionaires there are in America? They're probably not that many. Once we finish marketing to them, who are we going to market to? If you can believe that. But anyway, and here's the final piece of the story. Coincidentally, this is like some amazing coincidence. This is like any card at any number, but in story form, right? Hi, Mark. That finger trick really works. I like it. But here's the end part of that story. Just by coincidence, I got right. I'm a differentiation expert. I'm a creativity guy, an innovation guy for organizations. They hire me for this stuff. So I got a phone call from a guy who was putting on an innovation conference in the San Francisco area. And he said, Mark, I want you to fly out to San Francisco and speak at my innovation conference. And I said, great, love to. And he said, and he was just, like chatting. He said, who are you working with these days? And I talked about Steve Cohen as if he were the millionaire's magician. Like I didn't say I came up with this thing and he's getting all kinds of advice that it's not the best thing. I said, Steve Cohen, the millionaire's magician. And I started to talk about him in that way. And the guy on the other end of the phone, the guy in San Francisco said, wait a minute, does this guy live on the Upper West Side in New York? And I said, yeah, how do you know that? And he said, you won't believe this. He said, yesterday I got a call from a publicist who had heard I'm doing an innovation conference in San Francisco. And he called me to say, you need to have this magician come to perform at your conference. And I remember thinking, I said to myself, this is what the other guy said, a magician at my innovation conference. Why the blank would I want a magician at my innovation conference? But here's what he said. But I didn't know he was the millionaire's magician. Do you think you could get me a call with him? And I instantly hung up and I called Steve and I told him that. And he told his publicist, if you don't use the millionaire's magician in my advertising, you're fired. And that was the beginning of the millionaire's magician stuff.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how that all started. And then you get it's absolutely, so pretty influential actually in magic. If you think about it, you've contributed to, Matt King, Steve Cohen, and a whole host of other magicians. And obviously through the contributions to the books that you've put out, you've influenced a whole generation of magicians as well. So
I appreciate you. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. It's really, I'm sure like the people watching this and listening to this, like they've also, like yourself, have really changed people's lives with the work they've done, the tricks they've done, the illusions they've done, the books they've done. And I just want to say, if a trick or a book has influenced you, you should really contact the person who wrote the book or did the trick and tell them, because they really, really, really should know. And the reason why I say this is I've written a bunch of books, non-magic books and things like that. And I remember the second edition of Accidental Genius, which is a book on free writing that I wrote. The second edition of Accidental Genius had just come out, and I wanted to get publicity for it. So I emailed this guy, Michael McLaughlin, who had been a consultant at a major firm, and he wrote guerrilla marketing for consultants. He was wonderful. I loved his work. And I said, Michael, can I be on your podcast? I emailed. He said, absolutely, you can be on. And we arranged a date. And I remember just before we were about to go on, I said to Michael, right? He's the host, the podcast host. He said to me, I said to him, pardon me, I said, do you want me to introduce myself? Because I'm really good at introducing myself. Like, in other words, so you don't have to bother or whatnot. Like, sometimes they don't even know who you are. Do you want me to introduce myself? And he said, no, I know exactly how to introduce you. And I said, oh, okay. And so the music came up, and then the music came down, and Michael was now live, and he was talking about years ago, he was a consultant with a big giant consulting firm, and then he decided to quit, and now he was going to have to go out on his own. But he realized, even though he loved doing the consulting work a lot, he didn't know that much about biz dev, about how to find clients and get clients or whatnot. But he said, I figured like writing was going to have to be a big part of it. So he said, so I went to the bookstore and I bought a book called Accidental Genius. And that book changed my life. And he went on to talk about it, blah, 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 blah. So ladies and gentlemen, the author of Accidental Genius, Mark Levy. And the reason why I tell that story is not for like self-aggrandizement or whatnot, but I was so honored. But I remembered thinking, like, the story was talking about was like 10 years earlier. Mm-hmm. Like, I apparently had changed his life a decade ago.
That's
like,
amazing.
This is the guy whose work I loved. Like, and I remember thinking, man, I would have loved to know that. You know what I mean? Like, it was great I knew now, but I would have loved to know that I had changed his life. So now when people's work amazes me, or there's a great trick or whatnot, I like fall over myself trying to get word to them. And sometimes they appreciate it and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they don't care at all. But I still remember thinking, wow, that would have been great to know. Right? I'm sure you experience, like, who's someone whose work changed your life?
Oh, Eugene Berger is the easy one, of course, and then, the contributors to the style of magic I do include Doc Shields, mostly bizarre magicians, but Eugene Berger who goes outside of that. I did look into the Golden Age magicians to some degree. And I think that it's interesting to note this, like you'll see people with like posters of Houdini and Carter and Thurston and Dante and and all these other things, and there's still devils on their shoulders. There's ghosts and goblins and giant trolls pushing Houdini into a water tank.
I love that. That's the water torture. Yeah,
exactly. And if you find the right sources, you can find examples of some of the scripts or a review that includes the details of how those went, and the outline for one of these shows would be something like the magician there's an orchestra pit, it's an opera house, there's the magician comes out, like Dante would come out and do an introduction, this is what I'm going to do, and then he would mime most of the magic. It was silent, kind of like to some degree what a Copperfield show is with certain effects anyway. Like this is the story setting this up, and then I'm going to do it. But back then it was not sound bites. This was exposition. I've come from the far regions of the four corners of the earth to bring you from these exotic lands these fantastic secrets for me to share with you this beautiful evening. Thank you, the people of Chicago, for having me here this evening. It's my pleasure to be here. Now, from the deepest resource, of China, bringing this, but this would go on like for minutes. And then finally they would do. Tonight I'm going to cut this woman in half. I'm going to decapitate this person. I'm going to show you ghosts are real. And then there would be a story and a reason, and then they would go do that thing, and then there's music, and this was an evening show. You went out for hours, and there was an intermission, and you'd go in the lobby, and and get drinks and hors d'oeuvres, and then come back in, or go to the bathroom, of course, and come back in for the rest of the show, and then you took your carriage or taxi back to your house or hotel for the evening. It was an entire evening of magic. There were strolling magicians in the lobby. That's how some aspects of strolling magic was actually developed, was during the intermission for grander magic shows.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, so there are strings that lead from one thing to the next. Sure, it's like people forget the origins of these things. Like Houdini wouldn't have gotten into escapes if it weren't for the Davenport brothers existing, probably. I mean, you think about it. These. The point, of course, all this is that a lot of magicians want to have those posters, and they want to have it as decor at their house, and maybe even on their stage, for example. But some of them don't get the point. Like, you worship these guys, but do you understand them? Like they were storytellers. We would call them bizarre magicians today. These great magicians of the golden age of magic were not, card guys. They did some of that, of course. There was part of it to some degree, but they wanted you to believe that their magic was real. They wanted you to believe that these were miracles and moments of wonder up on stage. They were legitimately trying to convince their audience that magic illusion was real things, and it was titillating. And can you imagine putting devils and demons on your posters in that time of the history?
All right, interesting.
Yeah,
right.
If you think about it,
right.
Yeah,
I love that. So we were talking about expressing appreciation for things that really affected you, and you talked about going back to like golden age magicians or whatnot. Mm-hmm. Right. So yeah. I get, so if these guys were around today, that's who you'd be, along with Doc Shields and people like that, with, but the Dantes, and that's cool. I love that. So thank you for that. But anyway, just to go back to the point I was making is never fail to express appreciation for something. Mm-hmm. That's the, like, just be grateful that there are things on earth that you love, and let those things know it.
I was very lucky to be able to tell Eugene Berger before he passed away that I appreciated everything, his contributions. I remember, if I could tell the story real quick, I remember the first time I thought to contact him. I had the inkling, this is years ago, of idea to put on a bizarre magic conference, and this is before I even went to my own first one. So, right, to do something, and so I talked to a couple of friends. I believe it was Vlad, maybe it was one of the friends I talked to, and I said, I think about reaching out to Eugene, and I don't even know how to contact. I don't have his number. There's a number on his website. I just assume it goes to his agent or manager, or something like that. And everyone's like, I said, yeah, just make sure you don't talk about bizarre magic. It's like it's because I get that, because it's like bringing up work, or you're fanboy. You don't want to fanboy the more famous magicians, for example, right? Because they just get that all day long. They want to be, sometimes you just want to be in your downtime. You want to be treated like a regular guy, right? So when I called the number on his website to try to schedule an appointment, I answer, I call, it rings a couple of times, and lo and behold, there's this, there's that voice, that distinctive Eugene Berger voice, that raspy baritone. Yeah. I said, oh, I can't do it. But he goes, like, hello. And I'm like, I said, oh, is this Eugene Berger? He goes, yes. I said, this is Vince. And I said, look, I'm a magician. I just wanted to call you and talk to you about this idea I had. And I started, engaging in conversation about myth and folklore, legend and history before we started talking about magic. And after that, I'm pretty sure we were friends. And we talked about it, here and there, for a few years, and then unfortunately he passed away.
Right, but that's wonderful that you got that chance.
Yeah, it was later I told him, I said, look, I just, I didn't want to tell you this the first time we talked, but we said you really influenced like the direction I went into magic and how I proceed with things. It's just like storytelling, narrative, theater. It's better magic, in my opinion.
Right. Right.
When did that occur to you? Like the style of magic you like and when you start writing and that sort of thing? Because obviously that's, wonder, sharing magic with the audience and that sort of thing. How did that connect with you? How did you figure that out?
So again, if you think about it, I was doing magic in the mid 70s and the late 70s. And very, I used to be, and this, I'll tell a story that but most people don't know. I used to be very adept at sleight of hand, like knuckle busting kind of stuff. And then I actually had I have an essential tremor. I have a familial benign tremor. In other words, I'm not dying or anything, no more than anyone else is. But I have a tremor in my hands that's biological. That it was very slight when I was younger, and as I started to get older, it got worse, and so it made it hard for me to continue to do the kinds of slight, like doing stuff with a purse frame and having all kinds of things piled around. It was hard enough for me to hold the friggin' purse frame, much less conceal like 3 halves and 4 sponge balls in the hand while I'm doing it. So I started to get more and more into mentalism because of my tremor. And it's interesting. So I started to create magic tricks, and Phil Wilmarth, who was, I believe, the publisher of the Linking Ring, it was when I was doing my one-man parade for him. Phil Wilmarth, he read my one-man parade, and he said to me, and he did not mean this as a compliment. He just meant this in an objective way. He said, "You do magic like a mentalist." And which was true. No one had ever put it so succinctly, so clearly like that. So whenever I would do things, for instance, I had this trick without telling methodology in case, right?
Others were watching, yeah.
Right. So for instance, I would do Louis. I taught this to Louis Simonoff. If people remember Louis Simonoff, who I loved. So Louis was out in Vegas and he was at Gary Darwin's house, and he said, "I did a trick of yours. It fooled everyone." And this is all the, people from Vegas are there, they would come by at night. And what it was a coins through table, but it was done it wasn't done it wasn't done as a mentalism trick. It was just done in kind of the way a mentalist would attempt something. The idea of the trick was, I'm working on something. I don't really have it right yet, but I want to try it for you if it's okay. I need to borrow some coins. So do you have some coins, some pocket change? Great. You take from them. Do you have some pocket change? Great. Do you have some So, okay. So I call this trick and you start to count the coins in your palm. I call this trick the 25, 50, 60, 75, 77, 87. I call this trick, and then the number you say is based on the coins you have in your hand. The $1.87 through the tabletop trick. And so you close your hand slowly. You don't come near the table edge at all. very slowly, you close your hand, you put it down, and you slam your hand on the table, and coins rain down under the table. But when you lift your hand, apparently some of the coins are gone and some are on the floor. And you go, man, I missed it. I got some of them, but this sucks. You know what I mean? And so the number of coins, by the way, that penetrate, like, you know, they're, you know, it like maybe 27 cents penetrated, and now there's like $1.49 at the on top of. So in other words, they match. But that's the kind of way that I would do all kinds of tricks, right? I would do magic tricks, but I treated them like kind of mentalism, kind of like it may work, it may not, right? So and that all stems from the fact that for biological reasons, I stopped being able to do. I would rather have done Poor Charlie by Derek Dingle and things like that, but I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah. So you're working on some secret projects right now we will not talk about, but
right. You've been such a help on this. Yeah, I'm contemplating my own show, which we won't talk about what it's about or anything that now. But that's what I'm doing right now. And by the way, the reason why I don't want to talk about it, I told Vince this earlier. It's not that I'm again sharing what it is that I'm doing. It's that I've written lots of books. I've created lots of tricks. I've created lots of shows. I create a lot of stuff. And I find, and maybe some of you listening are this way too, I find that when I share ideas about what it is I'm creating, that it dissipates the need to create the thing. Mm-hmm. So in other words, if I talk about it, and talking's easy, it's that creative impulse is now satisfied. And so now I'm less likely to create the hard work of the thing itself because that itch was scratched. But I think it was you, right, who said with you, it's the exact opposite, that you like to talk things into being.
Yeah, I do. The more I talk about it, the more it forces me to do it actually. I also feel like if I talk to it with friends like yourself and David Parr and other magic friends, Vlad, and all the people I keep in touch with, I share these ideas that there's now the pressure's on. Like they know I want to do this, and if I don't do it, they're going to be disappointed. So it helps encourage me to actually get that thing made or that video recorded or whatnot. Just get that out there, and so the world can experience it. And I have a feeling, and it might be a little superstitious to some degree, that
should you be writing this down on a billet?
That's right.
Holding it up. Why are you telling us this?
Yeah. I had this feeling, the superstitious feeling that once you say something out loud, once that is a tangible, no longer an idea, a vague idea in your mind, but a tangible thing, even if it's something written, emailed, texted, or spoken, that it's now out in the world. It exists, and that when ideas are out, they're out of. It's like Pandora's box. It's out, and you can't put it back in. So if you don't do it, someone else is. That idea's time has come. So you better be the person who does it. Otherwise, you're going to be very sad. And those horrible thoughts. Did I tell the wrong people? Did that come out because that's happened to me before, where I've designed something and I sat on it too long, and then someone else did it. I'm thinking, did I tell someone about that? And now they're doing it. They're selling it on Penguin.
Right. Well, by the way, when I do differentiation for people, when I talk about differentiation, one of the things that I do, right? So this is non-magic. I'm talking to business people. One of the exercises I created that I run them through, I call the envy exercise, and it's this idea of, I want you to think about a business book you read or a speaker you saw or something like that. And you heard their main idea and it made you green with envy. And you said, wait a minute, that's my idea. That should be not that they stole it from you. It's that you came up with it independently, but that should be my best-selling book. That should be my huge speech. Those should be my high-profile clients. That should be me up there. I can't stand it. And then I have them do something with that feeling. But right, that idea of lighting the fire to get things done. I get it. That's cool.
Yeah, it's
By the
true.
way, you mentioned David Parr, and related to him, remember I said you should always express appreciation. So I had never met David, but a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, David did a show, and you kindly invited me to a show and then to the after party. And when David came there, again, I had never met him, but I had read a book of his many years ago, and I still remembered he had, instead of taking a lit cigarette and vanishing it, which is what most people did, he tried to think about what was more meaningful for that trick. And so he thought about how yogis, maybe would stick a lit cigarette in their hand, and it has to do with mind over matter. And so first it's withstanding the pain of the lit cigarette, and then it's having it vanish, And so I said, I still remember that. And I thought that was genius. And another thing in his book that he talked about was that he set himself magic, like a magic goal. I don't remember what it was, but I remember thinking when I had read it years earlier, it said, oh, wow, that's really interesting that you can set some overarching goal for the work that you're doing. Like in magic, that was something I hadn't ever thought about before. And I read, so I told him about, right. I saw him and it was like, oh, David, let me just tell you these things. Right. So,
yeah, it's amazing. You know how that cigarette trick is done. It's,
oh,
and that's how it's done. Sorry, I couldn't resist that. And,
right.
But anyway,
right.
The greatest magicians in the world, they understand, like the one. Let me be more clear. The ones that everyone remembers. All right, the ones that everyone knows. The names that there's like 4 names or 4 or 5 names in the entire world that everyone knows today. It's like that are the living magicians that are still. It's Copperfield, obviously.
Yes.
Penn and Teller, David Blaine,
Right.
Chris Angel, Darren Brown, basically, and that's really it. Am I missing anyone?
Well, in England, everyone knows Dynamo.
Dynamo, yeah, Europe, all over Europe, actually.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Dynamo is a big one. And of course, it's regional specific.
Right, with
being American biased.
Right.
Yeah. So, but there's I don't remember. I feel bad about this. There's a Russian magician, absolutely famous in Russia, absolutely the most famous magician in the world as far as they're concerned. I can't remember his name right now, but I was just reading about him the other day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but if anyone remembers it, please comment and I'll put it up there. But if they know what that is, but anyway, it's the most famous magicians in the world. They have some commonality about it. Their magic makes sense. Every effect has a point to be in the store, in the show, right? Is a reason for being there. A lot of times there's a narrative, a point that a theme. Like I always tell magicians, you want to put a show together. One of the first things you can do to help you with that, name it. Sometimes I when I put shows together, one of the first things I do, and works for me, it might not work for everyone, I name it first. I think to myself, I have a point I want to do, I have a thing I want to get across, and I need and a name will help me solidify the theme. Now that might change during the course of developing it, and it might be a totally different name by the end. But the name, I name it first, and then when I come up with the idea. And if no one ever hears that name, if no one ever says, here's, Mark Levy presenting this,
right,
or that, if they just say, here's Mark Levy, the magician performing tonight,
Right.
In your head, you know that, and that counts too to some degree.
Right. Well, that's interesting. So I appreciate what you're saying. I rarely do that. I appreciate like different,
Oh
people,
yeah, yeah.
different approaches. What I tend to do, if I'm creating a book or a show or something like that, I tend to think about, I first gather together all the best stuff, all the stuff that is obsessing me and fascinating me right then, like tricks, ideas, stories, like everything. I put like, what's the stuff that I just can't forget right now? Like that's just so great to me that that I'm on top of. And then I look at that, and then I start to say, how can I get as much of this into a show or a book or a speech as I possibly can? Because here's the thing, I only want, and this is if I'm even creating for someone else, right? Because I've created tricks and things and shows for other people, because I only, for myself or other people, I only want them to be using their best stuff. That's the kind of way I think about it. And by the way, this was really solidified for me about 15 years ago, however. So I took a comedy writing course in New York City. I took a stand-up comedy course, and it was only a couple of weeks. It was like 4 or 5 sessions. But the final session was you had to do stand-up at a major comedy club in New York on a Saturday night.
Ooh.
So I had to play Caroline's on like 48th and Broadway or whatever it is on
Wow.
Saturday night. Yeah, when 2 weeks earlier I had never written a joke, now I had to play Caroline's. And I remember I created my set, and I went up there, and I killed, by the way. They asked me back. I remember afterwards, by the way, I had 2 different people come up to me and said, I loved your set. And I remember thinking to myself, I have a set. I was like so transfixed that I had a set. But here's why I'm saying this comment. I was up there, and I remember saying a joke to the audience, and the audience was in hysterics. But I remember thinking, here's the whole point of the story. I remember thinking, wow, if they like that joke, wait till they hear the next joke, because that's way better than the one that they're crying at right now. And afterwards, when I was deconstructing the set, when I was thinking about what worked great and what didn't work as well and so forth, that idea of, if they like that, wait till they see this, has always been a driving force. If I'm writing a book or a speech or anything, it's like I don't want, you ever read those books? There are a lot of business books like this, where they have a good idea up front in the first 15 pages, and then the last 170 pages are horrible. They front loaded everything and whatnot. They're just padding the book out. And I find that sometimes with shows and all kinds of things where people like pad stuff out or whatnot. Like, I never want that to be. I only want best stuff. So that's why I'm so focused on these obsessions and fascinations, so that I can all right, if I take these obsessions and fascinations and they become the show or the book or the speech, now what's the name of the show? Does that make sense?
It does make sense, yeah.
Oh, David Parr, the legendary David Parr.
Yeah, and good evening to you too, by the way, David. Right. Yeah. To see. I see what you're saying, and I certainly have developed ideas that way. Similarly, it doesn't always work out. It's actually something I developed later on too. But I do think I think it definitely helps if you have a show, no matter how you get to that ending. It's great to have a show that a show that has a name. Right. I think even if you do it backwards from how I do it, and
right.
you develop everything first, and you look back on it and say, now this needs a name. Give it a name. I think that really, all the great magicians name their shows. It's David Copperfield could totally get away with just calling it the David Copperfield Magic Show, or just David Copperfield here, but he names every single show he does.
Right.
All of them do. I think that really kind of sets a bar for yourself to
Right.
do that.
Right.
But the point I always try to make is that what makes them successful, and it's not doing the same vaudeville jokes and magic tricks that people have been doing for 100+ years. Unless you're doing it ironically, and I think there's a place for that. But yeah, set yourself, be different. Be unique and different. Set yourself apart from how everyone else is doing it. I think you're doing. You're on the right track for that yourself. I think with some of the ideas that you have, and for your future project.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Can I tell everyone the one trick that I won't be doing?
What's that?
Steve Cohen would know. The only person who knows this is Steve Cohen. My all-time least favorite trick in the history of magic. There's one trick that I detest more than any other trick. You could put every other trick together, and there's one that I detest more. Want to take a guess?
It's a 21 card.
It's
21 card trick.
No. One more guess.
One more guess. All right.
It's not a card trick.
It's not a card trick. Okay. Sponge balls.
It's done with two props that are the same prop.
Interesting. Two props are the same
so
prop.
So you overtly have a duplicate prop on stage. Overtly. The audience knows it.
Oh, overtly there's a duplicate. David Parr says it's the egg bag.
No, I like the egg bag. No, linking ring, no. My all-time hated trick.
Let's give one more chance. Let's give the audience, our viewers, one more chance. So it's a
classic trick. It's a famous trick. It's not like some obscure trick.
Yeah, it's two items that are exactly the same thing.
They're exact same item.
Interesting.
And you call attention to it. You're not hiding anything.
I'm surprised we're not getting an answer on that. All right, it's time to give it up. Yeah.
The Chinese sticks. That is tipsy bot. No, that's a good trick. Yeah. No, it's the Chinese sticks. And I'll tell you why, right? Everyone knows the Chinese sticks, right? You have two sticks. They have tassels at the end. One is long, the other short, and you pull one and the other goes up and so forth. And sometimes you're supposed to cut supposedly a rope between them. And I remember, here's why. So this is not through logical deduction. This is through real, like feeling it in my chest. So when I was a kid, maybe 9 years old or so, my mom brought me to Macy's at Herald Square in New York City. And there was this wonderful man there who had a magic counter, and I forget his name, right? People know his name. And this would have been like 1970, 1971. And he showed me the Wonder Clock. It was this little metal clock where he could tell you the time. And I thought like he was a god. And he showed me the egg bag. And I thought, oh my God, this is the greatest thing in the world. And he showed me sponge balls. And like he showed me these things that were just like beyond belief. And then he took out the Chinese sticks. Now remember, I thought this man was a god. Yeah. And he started to do the Chinese sticks. Now, as a kid, I'm not that bright. It's not like I was a super smart kid. I was like just a kid. I wasn't that bright, and I'm watching him doing this. And at first I'm confused I'm thinking to myself, when is the trick going to start? And I'm not giving away what the methodology is in case, non-magicians are out there.
You're absolutely correct.
For like a kid who's not that bright, I'm standing there saying, the method, he had just floored me with 6 different tricks that I was like buying all of them. And I'm like saying, oh, I guess he's warming those things up to do the real trick. It was so transparent to my simplistic mind that I just could. When I realized, oh my God, that is the trick, I just couldn't believe it. And I've never seen a good version of the Chinese sticks ever. I apologize if some great people have done them, but I'm sorry. I hate that trick. What were you? Oh, right. Exactly. What's your most hated?
I think it's the Chinese sticks now. Here's the thing is,
and by the way, before you answer, I want to hear everyone's. David Parr, I want to hear everyone. Put in your least favorite trick ever. Go. Right, irredeemably dumb. Right.
Yeah.
Beyond.
All right. Liz, oh my goodness, a hated trick.
Your most hated trick, not a hated trick.
Oh my most hated trick. And
I like that you have negative body language, like you're really getting into it. Your legs probably your mustache is crossed right now. What's your most hated trick?
I don't remember the name of it. Because I never looked it up because I didn't care to do that. But I'm sure you'll know what I'm talking about.
Go ahead.
Those little bars, those little metal bar. You know what I'm talking about? It has letters on it. They're little. Someone help me out in the chat. They're little. And I have them. I have a set in my workshop, at the bottom of a junk box.
What's the effect?
It's a mentalism prediction effect with these little metal bars. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Say something in the chat. It's a mentalism trick with little. Here's the thing: is I don't like anything that is clearly a magic trick bought from a magic shop.
Right.
All right. Like where it doesn't exist anywhere on earth. Like I'll show you my chop cup. I have. I have my chop cup right here. As a matter of fact. I thought I did. I guess
you grow your chop cup bowls organically.
That's correct.
Appear of the natural world.
Well, I thought I had it with me, but I don't. But I have a chop cup that looks like a coffee cup. Because chop cups don't look like anything. Like people have told me, oh, it was like popular bar measuring tool or something like that back in the day. It's like, okay, whatever. No one knows that now.
Right.
Don't you?
Well, the idea, the sucker sliding die box. Yes, and by the way, if there's non-magicians listening, that's the name of the trick. What, sucker? We're suckers? Like that's the name of the trick. But the sucker sliding die box is a Victorian tea cozy. When we used it, it had no function other than as a magic prop, but it was for tea in the 19th century. That's what it was for. That was what I don't know. But I like the fact that when you were looking for your chop cup, that you were looking under your table, because it reminded me, and David Parr will chime in on this, because, right, David's from Chicago, right?
That's it.
Oh, I like it. I like it. But the fact that you looked under the table. So I had read in Close Up Magician, or whatever it was called, the Burt Allerton book, that like Allerton, he used to do the vanishing bird cage to all the tables that he was working, but he would get it by like apparently going under the table and coming up with the bird cage. Like there was a bird cage under everyone's table that they didn't notice. Like that. You just reminded me. Oh, you have a chop cup under here? Okay, I'm going to use that.
It's funny. I wish I remember. Oh, I found a variation on it. On
the trick you hate.
Yeah. I've seen it. The first time I ever saw it, it was a little prediction with letters on it, like 1 through F or A through F, and it had numbers on the other side, like 1 through 7 or 6 or something like that. Anyway, but it's most popularly known as hot rod.
Oh my God! Oh, I love hot rod.
I hate hot rod.
Yeah, you said 2 sticks. Oh, because you would have I don't want to say things for the public.
It's fine. The gimmick.
That's what threw me off. That's what because when you said 2,
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
do it
The
with
first time
one.
I ever saw it, they were using it as a mentalism effect to do a number and letter prediction. All right, and then I saw the hot rod variation of it, which is like colored dots or gems
Right.
and that sort of thing. And it bothered me because it doesn't exist anywhere. Like you had to have this made, and it's like, and they're doing it. The first time I ever saw it performed was at the Baltimore Travel Plaza, and hot rod is a good trick. Rod says, "All right, whatever."
I love and I think hot rod is natural. I think that they mine them in certain mines in parts of the world. They have miners go in and, like I think it's more natural, or they grow in a field.
That's right. Yeah, and like corn stalks, just like you peel back the green leaf.
Right.
Hot
Right.
rod.
Last year we grew wheat. This year we're growing hot rods.
That's right. So it bothers me about it is that it's
Tell us about this traumatic performance of hot rod that
so at the Baltimore Travel Plaza. Okay,
Yeah.
So it was like an all around. It was in the 80s. I was a kid. All right, they just built this travel plaza, and it's giving it. It makes it sound worse than it is because it was actually a nice place. They had a beautiful restaurant there with a stage for performers, magicians would come in and that sort of thing. And I was exposed to some local magicians. And it was the other. I'll tell you my actual most hated trick is even worse than the hot rod, and that is the bra trick that magicians do. Yeah, bra and scarves or whatever it's called.
Yeah, that's a hard.
All right, that was performed that night as a family show. I was 10 years old the first time I saw that trick. So where they pull a woman's bra off, and I'll tell you how it's done. They don't do that.
Right.
I'll tell you that because it's a dumb trick, and any magician performing that should not be performing that trick. Anyway,
Right.
And then he also did strolling during dinner. The magician who did that trick, the stage magician, he did strolling, and he comes around during the dinner show, the dinner part where we're eating. It's like an intermission. He does strolling. He does hot rod, and that trick is worthy of scoring.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. But Ron says you can tell a good story with it. Yeah.
I guess
Hot rod, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. So the
guy who did the hated bra trick was now strolling and doing hot rod.
He did hot rod, and I didn't the way he did it, I didn't get it. I was like, oh wow, but I didn't understand what was going on. I think he might have just done it badly. It was a vague memory, but I remember not liking it immediately. Everything else he did, like he did all classic standard magic tricks, like all the mainstream stuff. Everything you associate with being a magician. He was wearing a tux and a frilly shirt and everything. But the hot rod was the one trick I really didn't enjoy. Even the bra thing, my kid brain thought that was hilarious. It was only this the 80s, of course.
Right.
But years later, I realized what a dumb, sexist, horrible joke, magic trick that is.
Right. The trick I remember best from my first formal magic show, I was maybe 9 or 10, was some guy, at school, like some, guy maybe in his 40s or so, he was performing magic. And the trick that I just could not believe how extraordinarily great it was fresh fish.
Yeah.
And by the way, and I'm going to mention David Parr's name for the 5th time tonight or 6th time tonight. David showed in his library, he had a book by Arnold First, who had been like the manager for Orman McGill or whatnot. David, since you and I last spoke about that, I discovered that Arnold First, that man who wrote your book, was the creator of fresh fish. So there you go. It comes full circle. But fresh fish. I remember watching this magician do fresh fish because that's such a detailed trick. You know what I mean? It's, you're ripping off different words and you have an interesting story for each idea that you're ripping off. And then you realize like you've edited it too deeply. And the whole thing comes back. It's an like I remember as a kid, I was like, my head exploded when I saw that trick. I thought it was so great, you know.
Yeah, fresh. Oh my gosh, yeah, I'll tell you one thing. Wow, we're at an hour and 15 minutes now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had almost 24 people watching at the height of the show.
Cool.
But I believe that even the worst magic trick, the dumbest, silliest, goofiest magic trick, with a little manipulation by a talented creator, can be made into a moment of wonder. You know, when all magic tricks were made by the creator, they thought they made miracles when he initially built it. And now a lot of these old magic tricks end up in junk drawers unfairly. You know, the slum magic, they call it, back at, the junk drawer magic and that sort of thing, whatever names they come up with for that. That's unfair to the person who invented that. You know, how many decades ago? They didn't they didn't mean the imp bottle to look like a fishing lure. You know, they didn't want they didn't want these things to devolve into plastic toys. They thought they were making little moments of wonder, miracles in the palm of your hand. And now they're sold at Dollar Tree. That's not fair.
Right.
Inventors, Right. I suppose even the hot rod can be made into something creative. If you're giving,
I think you saw a bad version of hot rod.
Yeah.
I think you needed to see Tony Spina do it.
Okay.
And you would have bought it.
Yep. I'm going to buy a copy of Chinese Sticks. I'm going to see if I can make it.
Right. See, you can be the first one on the history of the world to make it a good trick.
Yeah. All right. I think that's it for this evening, Mark. I think we covered a lot of stuff. So I'd like to thank you so much. And remember, everyone, the link is right there. I also posted into the social media. Check out Mark's stuff online and that sort of thing. And we're going to have him back when he has his, when he's at Carnegie Hall doing a show, let's see. Don't know about first and fresh fish today.
Oh, who said that, David?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just saying what I read somewhere on the internet. Are you saying, David, that the internet is wrong?
That's never happened before.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. No misinformation ever.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. It's be taken as gospel, especially Facebook,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, Mark. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone. This has been great.
Yeah, everyone, I'd like to have a good night, and thank you again for coming on to Pose. And we'll have many more guests on here in the future. I'm sure David Parr will be back. He's been on here before, and lots of other magicians, performers, and entertainers. Can
you make with every guest? Can you have a standard question and ask them if they like Chinese sticks and hot rod?
All right.
Make that a standard. Whoever comes on, doesn't matter.
Yeah. David did not know it was his. I just didn't know it was his.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
But I want those to be like signature questions of yours. I have two questions for you.
Do you like hot rod? Do you like
the Chinese sticks?
Do you like, and do you like propless mentalism?
Right.
And if they say yes, I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna hit the end broadcast button. and yeah. So anyway, everyone have a great night. Thank you so much for coming on, Mark.
Thank you.
See you soon.